Hello and welcome back to my channel, my friends. Welcome to my official yet unofficial sequel to the hair care regimen that I learned about from Ruth Goodman's How to Be a Tutor. If you watch that video all the way to the end, you're going to realize that doing that method by our modern standards, there's a lot more hair oil that builds up over time. There's ways to mitigate it. The linen coifs definitely helped to kind of pull that away. The flipping my hair and brushing it from both top and bottom definitely brought out those oils quite a bit. The combing itself actually does quite a bit for trying to get all of the hair oils distributed down your hair. So let's face it, I don't believe that the people in the Middle Ages in the 16th century were nasty, dirty people. It's just not a thing. If you were dirty and unkept, you were deemed unhealthy. It was a source of disease in their mind. I mean, let's face it, washing our hands, well, they didn't know about that in the germ theory and all of that. They knew that when things were dirty, they tended to create more illness on some level. So you wanted to keep a good amount of hygiene about yourself. And after that experiment, I had to sit here and go, I can't believe that everybody, I'm not going to say the vast majority, but I can't imagine everybody is really okay with having really slicked down hair or just really kind of greasy feeling hair. And that started me down a rabbit hole trying to figure out, are there other methods? How often did they ever wet wash their hair? All of these other sorts of things. While I didn't get answers to those questions in my research, I did get some answers for what I am going to call medieval dry shampoo. In the Tortula editing, Meredith put a picture of the cover right here for them. But in this book, it's an amazing book from roughly the 1100s that was in almost constant reprint or recopying in one form or another and spread throughout Europe during the Middle Ages. They were still using it in the 16th century, but it starts taking on some interesting edits. I haven't seen a copy of the edits. I just got to read about it in footnotes. But this is the version that they translated into English because I, much to my own dismay, still haven't learned Italian. And they talk about hair care in a couple different ways. And one recipe that they go through is a powder to perfume your hair, basically. And it talks about grinding up ingredients and it will make your hair smell nice. But you need to make sure that you comb it through, that sort of stuff. And this was after I had just done the previous experiment. And it got me starting to wonder did they make their own dry shampoo? So the dry shampoo theory actually got me thinking, and I got really excited to try and figure out how that would work. I mean, what says 2020 more than dry shampoo? I know a lot of my friends used it a lot. And I love them. I actually used it more in the last year than I probably have in a long time. This is a more modern recipe that I mixed up several years ago. It involves arrowroot. I think there's ground up oatmeal, cocoa powder, which is what gives it the color that when it's put through sort of almost matches my hair, and ground lavender. Is there anything else? Oh, a little bit of cornstarch. So that's what's in here. It works really well. I found it as a recipe somewhere, but that's how I knew that it was possible to make your own dry shampoo. And then this rabbit hole continues because I started reading more about 18th century hair care, dating it back. In the 18th century, they used hair powder. You can read about that more in the American Duchess Guide to Beauty. this particular little tin, because I didn't want to make that volume of hair powder and then discover I was never going to do that, is a little tin of white hairdressing powder from LBCC Apothecary. Again, if the card magic doesn't work up here because of whatever reason, I will link her down below. She's got some amazing stuff, and this was kind of my then launch back point to start thinking historically here, which is where we end up with the Tortula and this lovely mess. So this is my finished medieval powdered hair perfume made out of spices and ground flowers. And we're going to give this a little bit of a try. So first, let's roll back through some footage on how we got to this point in our wonderful historical experimenty lives. And after this, or after that, I'm going to bring you back over here to my lovely historically adequate hair box I take to events. I'll grab out that medieval comb that I was using for the previous hair care video and give this a bit of a whirl so you guys can see a little bit more about it. But I will see you in a minute. The Tortula, it's a compendium of women's health recipes and such. What we're making today is to sweetly scent your hair, and it's based off of spices and rose water and dried rosebuds. So all of the stuff that I have, I've got rosebuds that I dried from last summer. I've got some cloves from my cabinet. Galangal root was something I did not have on hand. Same thing with watercress. I'll go ahead and link to the company I used to go and buy the stuff I didn't already have. In addition to that, we're also using nutmeg, rose water. So some of the stuff has already been ground up. Some of the stuff needs to be like the cloves, nutmeg, and roses. And the premise is you're supposed to just grind all of this stuff up into a powder, sprinkle rose water in it, and then you're able to comb it through with your hair when you're dressing it to make your hair smell nice. But when she combs her hair, let her have this powder. Take some dried roses, clove, nutmeg, watercress, and galangal. Let these powdered be mixed with rose water. With this water, let her sprinkle her comb and comb it with a comb dipped in the same, that her hair will smell better. And let her make furrows in her hair and sprinkle the above mentioned powder, and it will smell marvelously. So that is recipe 248 from the Trotula. My redaction of this ended up being that I took roughly half of an ounce and measured out each individual piece. So each thing weighed the same amount, whether it was clove, the roses, the galangal, the watercress, and then they all got mixed together on this dinner plate and left to dry so that the rose water wouldn't create something that was going to mildew on me. I live in a dry climate, but when you put something that is moist and vegetable based into a jar, you may end up with some experiments you weren't wanting. So we let this sit out and dry for about 24 hours after I'd mixed it with everything. And then I'm using that same piece of paper I had weighed everything on so that I could just funnel it onto the plate to create another funnel to put it into this jar. I don't have a ton of information about what they would have been storing it in. I imagine it probably would have been a myolica jar of some sort, since this would have been something that you keep around and you're probably using it fairly regularly, unlike myself today, where I'm going to use this once in a while when I go off to an event. Now we get to do fun. Can you see the mirror scene back and forth periodically until that starts to get too small? But we're going to give this a go. All right. So I have washed my hair a little bit more recently by modern standards, but it was definitely not this morning. This might not look as effective as it could. But I'm going to kind of walk you guys through how they tell you to use this and how I've been trying. So I'm going to pour out a little bit into the lid. Ta-da! Yes, there are some big chunks of rose. I ended up not getting the petals as ground as finely as I might have otherwise liked. Oh wow, that smells like floral Christmas. But I wouldn't worry about the rose petals being a little bit chunky. We are going to comb all of this out. So it should not leave a bunch of vegetation in your hair. That is the goal. Don't leave vegetation in your hair. But the manuscript says to make a little furrow in your hair is their exact thing. So I'm going to part it. And then you sprinkle some of this through. And we're going to comb it through. And you'll see the rose pieces come out. So I'm sure if it was ground finer, it would more adequately disappear and all of that fun. So we are going to use this and the narrow side of your medieval comb. We're just going to keep combing that through. The mixture of the different plants and the different types of plant fibers that we're using a lot of roots. And the structure of herbal roots is that it's going to try and absorb oil, liquid, that sort of thing once it's dried out like this. So by using those dried herbs that are ground up and those dried herbal roots, all of that fun, it's absorbing the oil from your hair. Let's see if I can do this a little bit better, camera facing instead of mirror facing. So, putting that into our little furrow up against the scalp. I'm going to kind of wiggle that one in because the furrow wasn't as well defined. And then we're going to take this and we're going to comb it through. It's really that easy. And it's super effective. It makes your hair smell like floral Christmas. Great. So cue time lapse of me combing this through in a bunch of different spots in my hair. Deal with any shiny, greasy spots I might have. Do this. All right. So, as you can see, I still have a lot of just healthy shine to my hair that I had before, but it's a little bit more matte. It's not quite as bright and shiny, which is kind of why I chose the lighting I did today, was to demonstrate this. So it feels really good right now. There's what little oil had built up throughout the day that I normally would have been combing out this time of day has all kind of been absorbed and combed out with this. One thing that I've noticed is helpful that they don't talk about in the manuscript is I like to have a little cloth in my lap to either drape over my shoulders when I'm doing this to keep the plant debris from falling onto my clothes, or in my lap so that I have something I can kind of brush this off against. You saw some of the bits of rose that were coming out were kind of big, or just general like that oil residue as it mixes with some of the dry shampoo. So that's my one tip and improvement. Something that seems like it would be totally reasonable. Have a tiny square of scrap linen from somewhere and just wipe your comb off as you go. Anyway, is this an experiment you want to try? Trying to figure out historical dry shampoos, maybe not wash your hair as much during the pandemic, or just at reenactment events. That was kind of the big draw for this whole thing. So this project was ironic because of the pandemic and all of us lounging around in pajamas or whatever. A lot of people working from home. That wasn't really me, but some people were doing that, and all the jokes that ensued about sweatpants being the new normal. But on the more practical side, when I go back to week-long camping events, I can take a little tin of this with me, not unlike my tin of 18th century hair powder for 18th century events, and comb this through my hair every couple days to keep the oil down and keep everything cleaned up and ready to go. So I'm excited. If you have tried this recipe before or any of the other ones in the Tortula, please let me know. I heard about it at a online beauty and hygiene apothecary event that the SCA was doing via Zoom a couple months ago, and they had mentioned it offhand, and I thought that was cool. Started researching it, and yeah, it does more than just make your hair smell nice. So this is my cheers to you. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.